Hello, Tommy Ellis here again, National Installation Training Manager for Fibo North America. Thanks again for joining us. Today, we're going to talk about how to install Fibo in a shower that's got a window. We have some instructions in our written guide. However, they're not very detailed, and a lot of people have been asking, hey, how do I install Fibo in a shower that's got a window? So today we're going to go through the steps involved in doing that, doing it properly, taking all the precautions necessary to make sure that we minimize the potential for any water to get inside the installation at all. So as you can see, I've already got the panels installed, and we installed these panels the same way we install everything else. We sealed up all the cut surfaces, etc. I have not sealed the cut surface of my window opening yet because I'm going to do that in a later step, and we'll go over that. But there's also a couple of different options of what you can use for your substrate. And what I chose is HardieBacker. You can use HardieBacker, you can use cement board. You might be doing a remodel in a shower that's already got drywall in the window, and that's fine too. We're going to go ahead and cover it with some flashing tape. So what's on the wall really is kind of secondary, as long as there's something there to cover the opening of the window frame, because as you know, the rough opening and the size of the window are two different things. So you want to make sure you have that covered. One thing I want to bring attention to is the way that I ran my OSB strips around the window. If you got drywall or something else on the wall, you're obviously going to just cut a hole around the opening and put it up. But what I did do here is I went ahead and added additional strips all the way around my window, so that when the Fibo lays flat, if I need to add additional screws in this space around the window opening itself, I've got some solid material in order to be able to do that. All right. So the factory recommendation, if you're going to install Fibo in a shower that's got a window, is that you use 3-sided Fibo and either a PVC, solid surface, a piece of natural stone, something like that. The reason for that is because we want to allow proper drainage off of the windowsill down into the shower and don't leave a place for water to collect. However, we know some of you out there say, you know what, I don't care, I want to use Fibo on all 4 sides. It's not recommended, but there is a way to do it to minimize the risk of any potential water issues down the road, and we're going to show you how to do that one as well. I've got a piece of PVC material here, and as you can see, I've already cut it, and I got some dog ears on the end. And the reason for that is it's going to sit on the sill, and I'm going to trim the window 3 sides with large Fibo L profile. And I've got something on the end for my trim to sit on. And that's why I do it that way. If we're using Fibo on all 4 sides, all the panels are going to sit flush inside the opening, and we're going to do a 4-sided picture frame using large L profile. And we'll get into that a little bit further in the video. The first thing that we need to do is I need to seal all of my cut surfaces of the Fibo panels that I put up, and any gaps that might exist between my substrate and my Fibo. I'm also going to seal any gaps where my substrate touches the window. Again, we're going to cover it up with flashing, but in this instance, we definitely want to overkill seal everything to minimize the risk of any water getting into this installation anywhere at any time. So basically what I'm going to do is anywhere there's a gap or an intersection of 2 pieces, I'm going to go ahead and seal those up. So we're going to get it here up along the window. I'm going to get the corner. I'm going to fill in this gap between the panel and the substrate as well, just to get that sealed. Like I said, we're going to cover this again with flashing in a minute, but we're going to go ahead and overseal this unit. So I'll go ahead and start doing that now. As we go through several different steps of applying sealant, we are going to use quite a bit of sealant. And I want to bring to your attention the fact that Fibo Seal will stick to itself even when it's fully cured or partially dry. So if you're not able to finish this application or installation all in one day, it is possible to stop and start up again the next day, as the Fibo Seal will stick to itself. So the first step is complete. We've done all of the preliminary sealing of the cut edges of the Fibo, any gaps between the Fibo and the substrate. We also did the place where the substrate's touching the window. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to flash the whole opening, and we're going to use this double-sided window flashing tape. It's kind of a butyl-based material. It's got self-stick adhesive on the back, and we're going to wrap the entire window. We're going to cover it to the face of the Fibo. I'm going to overlap a little bit of this stuff so that it's just touching the frame of the window, but not so much that it's exposed, so that the pieces of material that we put up will actually cover this thing where it's sticking to the window. But again, we want to over waterproof this entire installation. So that's what we're going to do next. Another thing I want to mention real quick is you saw I used quite a bit of sealant when I did this first opening, and you're probably going to go through an extra 2 tubes of Fibo seal to install a window shower. So if it's 2 for the shower, get 2 for the window, because we're not only using it as sealant, we're going to use it as our finished glue as well. Flashing tape is now installed, and I trimmed it flush with the face of the Fibo. Next thing to do is we're going to set the windowsill. So on this one, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to apply Fibo seal to the back side of the windowsill and to the inside where it's going to be touching both the window and the front face of the Fibo. I'm also going to run a heavy bed of Fibo seal as my glue on the deck of the sill. I'm also going to put some on the bottom of this to make sure that I've got very, very good strong adhesive, and once this thing's set in place, it's not going anywhere. Now that my windowsill is in place, I'm ready to go ahead and install the 2 side legs and the header. What I'm going to do is I'm going to install the header first, and then I'll put my 2 side legs on to hold the header in place. You may, depending on if you get any sagging, you might want to put another piece in the middle to hold the window in place while the glue dries for 15-20 minutes before you finish it out. But I've already applied Fibo seal to the bottom, to the back end, and the top. I'm going to leave the leading edge unsealed because I'm going to seal the whole opening again, including this grain, before we go ahead and finish trimming it out. But since we're going to switch over to a second option for windowsill for the 4-sided Fibo, we'll go through all that sealing process and everything a little bit later. But I'll do the same thing. I'll put the sealant on my surface or as my glue, and then I'll also put my sealant on the back as my glue behind here. We'll set these pieces in place, and I'll be back in just a minute. And that's the 3-sided Fibo. Got my 2 sides, got my top. 2 side pieces are supporting the upper piece. So when you cut them, make sure you cut them nice and tight, because we do want them to act as a support piece as well as the decorative piece on the inside. You want to be careful not to make them too big, because it's going to start bowing your windowsill potentially. Another thing I want you to keep in mind is that I put about a 1/8 inch slope on this windowsill so that water is going to drain out and into the shower when we're done. We are going to be putting trim on as well as finish sealing this unit, but I'm going to go into that once I switch this out and have Fibo on all 4 sides, because those steps are going to be the same. The only difference with this one is we're going to run a bead of Fibo seal along the bottom of the windowsill. We'll seal at the corners, we'll seal where it touches the window, and then we'll have a 3-sided picture framed L profile finish, but we'll go over the application of the trim when I do the next part. Be right back. Using Fibo in a four-sided configuration, as we're about to demonstrate, is not recommended or supported by the factory in a shower or tub surround space. We're showing this method in order to give you the best way to minimize the risk of any future water ingress issues, etc. in the future. In any non-wet space with a window, four-sided Fibo is acceptable and supported. And through the magic of television, we now have our four-sided Fibo done on the inside of our window. The one difference is that Fibo is our window sill as well, and I didn't run it over like I did with my other window sill for drainage, because we're going to have to cover this thing on all four sides with an L profile, so everything needs to be flush. So I've got my pieces glued in. Again, I started at the bottom, stuck my piece on the top, put the two sides in, so the two sides are holding that in place. The next thing I need to do is I need to seal the exposed grain, and I also need to seal any gaps between where the Fibo panels meet at an intersection. So we're going to fill all that up with Fibo seal, and then we'll talk about the tricky little difference when it comes to cutting your large L profiles. Now all the sealing is done. As you can see, I sealed the cut surface. I also sealed the gap where the Fibo met at an intersection. Next thing I want to talk about is the trim that we're going to use. We're going to use the large L profile, not the small one that we normally use for something that sits flat against the wall. The reason for that is because we've got two overlapping pieces of Fibo here, and we need the thickness of the 1 inch to be able to cover that whole transition. Just a 3/8, if you remember, it's only the thickness of the Fibo, so it's going to leave that gap that we cut, or there's the space between the adjacent pieces of material. So we need to use the 1 inch L profile to cover that. So, you know what I also wanted to mention? I probably noticed that I switched from white Fibo seal to gray Fibo seal. The reason I did that, and it doesn't really matter, it's kind of up to you, but the window frames are typically white, so when I was doing the initial sealing and initial gluing and everything, I figured it'd just be easier for cleanup and everything else just to use white. I ended up using that whole one tube of white, so when I talk about the two tubes of Fibo seal that you're going to need to install this, maybe make one of them white, and you can use that as your glue in your initial sealing and whatnot. Framing out a window opening using the large L profile, the miters are going to actually end up being backwards from what you're used to. If we're putting this up on a wall and the 3/8 inch side is covering the Fibo, then we are going to 45 it this way so that the next piece can come in and we have a nice 45-degree miter. Since the L profile now is going to be the 3/8 inch side and all of my pieces need to come together, I'm actually going to miter in this direction so that all the panels come together on a 45. I'm going to put these on the saw and I'll show you what I'm talking about. For me, it's easiest if I measure my inside to inside dimension, mark on my material which direction I want to cut the miter, because I've wasted several sticks of this by cutting them in the wrong direction. So take your time when you get to this part. But the application of the L profile around the window is going to be basically the same as any other normal application of Fibo L profile. So we'll get on over to the saw and we'll show you what we're doing. So as I mentioned, the miters that you're going to cut on this particular way of installing the L profile, your miters are going to be backwards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my first piece here on a 45, measure my inside to inside dimension, and then cut the opposite miter. So we'll do that real quick right now. Even though we've already got fresh Fibo seal up on this opening, when I install it, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run another bead along the face of the Fibo panel. I'm going to run another bead right along the edge of the panel on the inside of the frame, and then I'll put a little bit of extra on the 1-inch leg of the large L profile as well. The reason for that is I want to try and get a consistent ooze of sealant out of that profile so that I've got ensured that I've got perfect water tightness, especially on the bottom. Because on the bottom, we don't have anything for the water to drain over. This is going to create a little bit of a dam, which is one of the reasons why we recommend using the other types of material as opposed to using a Fibo windowsill with an L profile. Anything that sits on here that has water on it, it's going to drip whatever. Even though I have a slope on this windowsill, water's going to collect right there at the lip of the L profile. So I want to make sure that they don't leave anywhere for water to get in behind that L profile that could possibly find its way somewhere else a little bit later on. You're also going to want to make sure you tell your customers that if we do it this way, that it is going to collect water and it's probably going to get dirty. So one of the things that they're going to want to do is they're going to want to make sure they wipe it down regularly and keep it clean to keep it looking nice and minimize the risk of any potential issues down the road. So I cut the first piece and dry fit it, and it's basically going to install just like so. And you can see my miters are in the right direction. And we'll go ahead and put this one up, do the rest of them, and then we'll talk about how we're going to finish seal the unit. And now our L profile is complete, and we did a 4-sided frame. You want to make sure that your miters are nice and tight. You might want to squeeze a little extra Fibo seal into those corners, maybe have a little excess come out and kind of help you finish out that joint there where the 2 sharp pieces of metal are. But then I cleaned up the inside where I had that excess squeeze out. Like I said, we have a lip here all the way around, so we don't want to allow water to get inside. So I made sure when I pushed all my pieces in places that I got a good consistent squeeze out, cleaned all that up. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to finish seal the unit. And we're going to do basically the same thing now that's finished that we did in the very beginning when we were sealing the window and the substrate and whatnot. We're going to do the corner. We're going to do where it's touching the window on all 4 sides. And we're also going to get the bottom of each corner. What we're going to do this time though is we're going to use the number 5 sealing tool. And if you've seen the Introduction to Fibo basic training video, you know exactly what the number 5 sealing tool is, because that's what we use when we're tooling our corners. We want to have a nice 5mm bead of Fibo seal all the way around the inside finish of this unit. So I'm going to start over on one corner. I'll show you a close-up. I'll finish out the unit. And we'll come back, we'll recap, review, and get you on your way. And now the unit's sealed. We've got everything sealed from the corners where it's touching the window all the way around. This unit is now done. Now our unit's complete, and that's the end of our installation training video for how to install Fibo in a shower that's got a window. Remember, a couple things to review. If you can, 3-sided Fibo with a windowsill that you can overhang, you can dogleg, and you can get proper drainage with. If you have to do it using 4-sided Fibo and a 4-sided L-shaped frame around it, that's fine. This is how you do it. All of the steps in sealing and everything else that we did seems like overkill, and it probably is. But we want to make sure, window area in particular, that we don't allow any opportunity for any moisture to get into the installation anytime at all. So that's that. If you have any questions on this particular installation, any of the other topics that we've covered in previous ones, or any new questions, reach out to me. I'm going to leave you my contact information at the end of this video, and we will talk to you next time. Good luck in your Fibo journey.